for joining this month's social listening update for January 2026. Sorry that I'm getting it to you a little bit later than I would like to. Um, Anyways, across all the pieces that I tracked last month, a clear picture is emerging of communities and stewards continuing to embrace the vital conditions, making investments in youth civic engagement, and implementing creative, culturally grounded engagement strategies as practical ways to turn big values like equity, regeneration, and democracy into daily practice. So let's look at what that means through these themes. So up first is health is a civic choice that we make together. So across this month's stories, we're seeing like health and equity show up less as programs and more as community-wide choices about how we live together, create policies and budgets, and share power. The Matsu 2025 Community Health Needs Assessment is a good example. It really encouraged public agencies, nonprofits, and residents to treat data as a living tool for joint action, not just a static report, and it was completely organized around the vital conditions for health and well-being. We saw this opinion piece from Allentown that also made this point really clearly that like equity isn't a program that someone else runs, it's a choice that the whole city makes through budget priorities, land use, and shared power. Leaders also echoed this same accountability mindset in the Leonard Parker Pool Institute's Health Impact Alliance reflections, stating that, listening to community voice, sharing data back, and co-creating plans are now expected practices. These are not just nice to have. So overall, we're seeing like less crisis response and more of a collectively shared long-term project of shaping the kind of places that we choose to be living in together. Up next, local leaders and youth building civic muscle. So from Greene County, Missouri to Washington State, we saw stories about people strengthening the real infrastructure of civic life. So the skills like organizing, listening, bridging differences, and showing up. So in Greene County, Missouri, there's a local commentary piece describing civic muscle exactly as that, like something communities have to exercise if they want to improve health and well-being. The University of Missouri created a civic muscle index to give civic muscle this concept like measurement power. And so the index treats neighbors' willingness to help each other, volunteerism, trust, and pride. It's measuring all of these and treating it the same on the same level as economic data would be. Schools are also a place that are stepping up as like training grounds for democracy and building and naming civic muscle. Salida High School's Beyond the Diploma story shows how students are learning civic participation and civil discourse as core life skills and not just as like an academic supplemental part of education. There was also a piece about how cultural exchange programs are helping to like equip and build up future citizens, and it stated how cultural exchange programs in schools are designed precisely to move students beyond the familiar, to challenge assumptions, broaden perspective, and build the civic muscle required to live in a pluralistic society. So together, these stories suggest a shift from, seeing civic muscle as something that happens occasionally, like during elections, and more so building it as like a lifelong shared skill and muscle that is being introduced, earlier and earlier in school settings. Lastly, creative place-based strategies that are, weaving healing, culture, and oversight together. In Atlanta, a mobile art experience turned buses and public venues into healing spaces. They used local artists and sound and storytelling to try to foster reflection and belonging, like directly within neighborhoods. The organizers called it work at the intersection of arts, activism, and equity, and bringing wellness to where people are. And in Hawaii, the Aina Aloha and regenerative economy impact model added another powerful dimension here, grounding economic and governance decisions in indigenous values of stewardship and shared prosperity in, over short-term gains. So, across these creative and cultural efforts, we're seeing like health and democracy expressed not necessarily through like meetings or like policy briefs, but through culture and art and place-based leadership, which builds off of themes that we've seen in earlier months as well. So overall, um, January stories, makes it really clear that communities and stewards are, working towards turning big values, like equity and regeneration, democracy into daily practice. Whether it's like data sharing or youth engagement or healing arts, like each story points to this deeper truth that our collective well-being depends like not just on systems, but on the choices and relationships and like creative energy that communities are bringing to the table together. Thanks for listening, and stay tuned as we keep tracking what's going on in the media. And I will continue to report back. Thank you.